بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. أسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجهه الكريم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Let me return some of your greetings. Wa alaikum salam, Sister Karima. Wa alaikum salam, Sayyidi Isa. Wa alaikum salam, Salina. Wa alaikum salam, Hamza. Wa alaikum salam, Brother Talib. Barakallahu bikum. May Allah reward you all and bless you all. I wanted to, insha'Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, have a discussion about the difference of narrating and understanding. And then I want to put that in the context of the understanding of a Salaf. As Muslims, we have a blessing and a favor from Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala by sending us the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. As Allah indicated in the Quran in Surah number 3, verse 164. One of my favorite verses, in that it really tells you of the blessing of Allah upon us and the purpose and function of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah mentioned in this verse, the meaning of which is, certainly Allah did favor the believers when He sent from among them a messenger who recites His signs, teaches them, purifies them, and teaches them the book and the wisdom. And the wisdom here, the scholars interpreted it as the Sunnah. And before that, they were in manifest misguidance. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by saying, لَقَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, that Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala certainly favored, blessed, endowed upon the believers by sending us the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. What does the Prophet do, sallallahu alayhi wasallam? He recites his signs. He gives us those signs from Revelation, and then those signs in the creation, and purifies us by helping us remove, or giving us the knowledge and example how to remove the blameworthy characteristics, and how to acquire the praiseworthy characteristics. And he teaches them the book, meaning Al-Quran, and the wisdom. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. And the wisdom, which is the Sunnah. So every Muslim, every believer receives revelation through the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in terms of him teaching, whether verbally or practically or through his characteristics, the Quran and the Sunnah. There is no Muslim who claims to be Sunni who does not believe with an absolute conviction in the Quran and the Sunnah. Every Muslim believes that, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us in the Quran, what means obey Allah and the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So this is well known. We recite the Quran, even if the person did it just during the month of Ramadan. They read the Quran and they know that the Quran is a source for guidance. As Allah said, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. It is a book, it has no doubt in it, it is a guidance to the pious people. So every Muslim knows we must follow the Quran. And the Prophet ﷺ was sent to explain what was revealed in the Quran. So that's his Sunnah. So we follow the Sunnah. So this is not an issue of dispute. And I'm saying this because sometimes you need to get foundational things together so that you're able to understand details. If the foundations are not sound, sometimes details become foggy. So every Muslim, every believer, it is obligatory upon them to believe this. So every single one of us, no matter what position we have that we believe is correct, highlight that we believe it is correct. I don't think anyone, even misguided people, to themselves, they believe they're right. They don't believe like I'm just making it up. Even if what they're actually doing is making it up. But from their side, they actually believe they're following the Quran and the Sunnah. They believe it. And the evidence of that belief is that even for the things they are mistaken in, they'll quote the Quran and the Sunnah. So what confuses many people is that they'll be listening to two opposing creedal convictions, and both proponents of those convictions will quote the Quran and the Hadith to substantiate their claim or their belief. So the person who doesn't understand what I'm getting ready to talk about will get confused. So, as an example, Al-Sunnati wal Jama'ah, as we understand it, are the Asharis, the Maturidis, those who follow the four schools of thought, Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi, Hanbali, and the people of Tasawwuf. That's Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, as we understand it. as we believe it to be, right? Then on the other side, you have al-Wahhabiyya, or they call themselves as-Salafiyyah, or they call themselves al-Athariyya, whatever name they want to give for themselves. They believe that they are following the Quran and the Sunnah. And for their convictions, which we totally disagree with, they will quote verses from the Quran and Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And when you examine both approaches, you will notice that oftentimes they quote the same verses in the same Hadith. And that's what makes it difficult for people to follow and distinguish, because now you're confronted with everyone quoting the Quran and the Hadith. So what is the issue? It's understanding the Quran and the Hadith, understanding the Quran and the Sunnah. There's a difference from narrating verses of the Quran or narrating Hadith and understanding those verses and those Hadith that one narrates. So here, there needs to be focus on how do we understand what we're quoting. So oftentimes, I was talking to one of those Wahhabi people who calls himself Salafi. And I repeat, because I honestly believe that our community has been lied to about Islam from the side of that group. So I'm very keen in identifying them. I don't say Salafi, except that I make sure the person understands what I mean by that is Wahhabi. So I'll put it, whenever I say Salafi, know that I'm referring to al-Wahhabiyya. So Wahhabi and Salafi are two terms referring to the same group. Right? Some of you may be sensitive to this and you may not agree. Just like you have sensitivities, so do others. So sometimes we have to understand. So those Wahhabi people I was talking to one of them, and he said to me, I'm quoting the Quran and Sunnah. I said, I am not disputing with you quoting the Quran or the Sunnah. My disagreement is not with the verses you quote or the hadith you quote. My disagreement is with how you understand those verses and those hadith you are quoting. This is very important, right? Because you're quoting, and what you're deducing from those is the thing that I disagree with. So, for instance, the person may quote a verse of the Quran. He say, Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa. For instance, he recites Surah number 20, verse number 5. And when he understands this verse, that's what Allah said, Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa. What he understood from that is that Allah rose above the throne, and that is a location for him. That understanding is what we disagree with, not the verse. Does everyone follow that? He recites the verse, Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa. What he understands from that is that Allah rose up and settled on the throne, and that is a location for him. That understanding is what we disagree with, not the verse. The verse is in the Quran. Every Muslim who reads the Quran will read that verse and will recite that verse and believes in that verse, but not as you understood it. This is very important. Or he'll recite the verse, Yadallahi fawqa aydihim. And from that verse, he would understand that Allah has an organ called a hand, but we don't know what it looks like, nor do we ask what it looks like. That understanding of that verse is what we disagree with, not the verse. So I give you examples, right? It is not necessarily that we disagree in the Quran and the Sunnah. We don't disagree about the Quran and the Sunnah in some cases. Sometimes the mistake is in the narration itself. You're narrating wrong. But when you narrate correctly, the disagreement is in the understanding of that narration, how you understood it. And this is important. So, among principles that are agreed upon by every group that claim to be Ahl Sunnah is that we take our evidences from the Quran and the Sunnah. I remember one of our teachers, they were talking about a discussion with one of those Wahhabi people. And they said, we're upon the Quran and Sunnah. And his response was like, what, we upon the Torah and the Injil? I mean, what are you as if you're saying something like some bright idea, some newly discovered matter. We're upon the Quran and Sunnah. What, we're upon the Torah and the Injil? What are you talking about? Every Muslim who believes in Islam is upon the Quran and Sunnah. So that's not the issue. The issue is how you understand the Quran and the Sunnah. So from this, the claim is Our understanding is the understanding of as-Salaf. That's the claim. We follow the Quran and Sunnah upon the understanding of as-Salaf. Here's the second thing. So number one, we talk about the understanding. The second thing is the understanding that you claim is the understanding of the Salaf. Is it truly the understanding of the Salaf? So then we need to define who are the Salaf. I'm trying to walk us through something that we really need to understand. Like, it's time to get our shovels out and really dig a little deep. Scratch the surface and then dig so we can get our way to understand deep matters that are necessary for us to get on the straight path to the best of our ability. So since we agree on the Quran and the Sunnah, it's revelation. The problem is understanding. If the claim is this is the understanding of the Salaf, let's put that claim to a test. In order to do that, we have to distinguish and identify who are the Salaf. The Salaf, so as-Salaf, they are the early Muslim generations. And you can look at the Salaf in two ways. And it's based on narration. There is a hadith related by Imam al-Bukhari in his Sahih that the Prophet ﷺ said, the best of the people are my generation, then those who came after them, and then those who came after them, or those who follow them, and those who follow them. So he mentioned these three groups of people in terms of generation. If you understand that as succeeding people, then the Salaf is going to be the companions, the followers, and the followers of the followers. So as-Sahaba, wa tabi'in, wa atba'i tabi'in. That would be the entire, in terms of generation, people after people. If you looked at it in terms of time, because the Prophet ﷺ said, khayru nasi qarni, and linguistically, qarn is 100 years, 100 years, right? So that's a century. So if you look at it from time, you're going to say those who lived during the first 300 years. Is this point clear for everyone? Is this definition of the Salaf clear for everyone? If it's not clear, just say it's not clear so I can make sure. But I want to make sure you all follow me. I'm really, really trying to help us get this thing down packed. So there is a basis in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where this concept of Salaf means. Salaf linguistically means those who came before you, right? Your predecessors. So the Prophet ﷺ mentioned these three generations. They're called as Salaf. Now, so that's the Salaf. Since we understand that, either we look at it as the companions, the followers, and the followers of the followers, and we restrict it there, or we look at the century as 100 years, and we say those who live within the first 300 years of the Prophet ﷺ, they are Salaf. Both definitions are understood among the scholars of Islam. So they're going to mention the Salaf, and they're going to mention it sometimes referring to the companions or the followers of the followers of the followers, and sometimes they're going to extend it. So for instance, they may mention that Imam al-Bukhari, who died in the year 256, or Imam Muslim, who died in the year 261, they may count them among the Salaf, even though they weren't from those first three generations of people. But in time, they lived within the first 300 years. So they're going to be counted. If you want a stricter definition, they won't be counted. But as is generally understood, these are the scholars of the Salaf, right? So here, for us, why is this becomes important? Because if you don't identify the Salaf, when you talk about the understanding of the Salaf, you may misrepresent it. Solely because you don't know who the Salaf are. So, for instance, Ahmed ibn Taymiyyah, who is very significant, all of you should know this name. Why is it important? Because Ahmed ibn Taymiyyah is, for the people we're talking about and dealing with, he's their first leader to give them their ideas. He is, for them, the authority in understanding something or not understanding. Whatever he say becomes the facts to them. If you look at his date, he died 728. So my question to you, is he from the Salaf or not? That's a question. You look at his date, is he from the Salaf or not? That's a question. Come on, engage me. Are you sure, Zahir? Nice time. From time or from people, is he from the Salaf? So the answer is no. Hence, whenever we're talking about the Salaf, if we're strictly talking about the Salaf, then he is not an authority in that subject because he's not from the Salaf. The best we could take from him is his narrating from the Salaf. And then that is an evaluation, right, wrong. But he himself is not from the Salaf. So when we're talking about the Salaf, he is not the determining factor as to what is from the Salaf and what is not, because he's not from the Salaf himself, right? This is extremely important. Unfortunately, most of the people who claim to have the understanding of the Salaf, really they have the understanding of Ahmed ibn Taymiyyah. And they attribute that understanding to the Salaf. Whether they know it or not, when they actually talking about the Salaf, they are usually talking about the understanding of Ahmed ibn Taymiyyah. Why? Because it is through him that they look at the Salaf. They don't look at the Salaf for the Salaf themselves. They look at the Salaf through the works of Ahmed ibn Taymiyyah or through the works of those who follow Ahmed ibn Taymiyyah in our time. That's their understanding. So when they say the understanding of the Salaf, that really means Ahmed ibn Taymiyyah's understanding of the Salaf. not the understanding of the Salaf, what Ahmed ibn Taymiyyah understood from what he believed was the understanding of the Salaf. It's two different things. That's just factual, right? So if we're going to talk about the Salaf, it is important that we identify them. So if we're talking about the Salaf, we don't need Ibn Baz or Ibn Uthaymeen or Al-Albani, for instance. Why? All of them died in the 15th century Hijrah. All of them died in our time in the 15th century Hijrah. All of them. So none of them are from the Salaf. So if we're talking about a Salaf, we don't need to talk about them. Nor do we need to talk about Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, who died in the beginning of the 13th century. So all of these people would not be from the Salaf. So their understanding is not the determinative factor of the understanding of the Salaf. Does everyone understand that just simple logically? From the logical standpoint, do you understand that? And I speak like this so we don't assume, right? I don't want to assume for you. I want to make sure we all on the same page. Because sometimes you can't have a discussion if we're talking about different things, right? Let's make sure we all talking about the same thing here. So once we determine we all talking about the same thing, then it's a much fairer conversation. It's a much more fair conversation when we all talking about the same thing. But if we got alternative facts, we got a problem here. So with that understanding going forward, whenever we say a Salaf, that's who we're talking about. Now, a key for us is that we don't mix terms. A part of our misunderstanding is not understanding terms. So as Salaf, we identified. As Salaf are not the same as Salafiyyah. They're not the same. So when you say as Salaf, they are not the same as Salafiyyah. As Salafiyyah, as a title, are a group of people who claim that they follow the way of as-Salaf. I'll repeat. As-Salafiyyah are a group, a modern group. As a movement, they're no more than 200 and something years, if that. As a movement, as a group by the name of as-Salafiyyah, that's new. No one prior to 250 years, maybe, I don't even think it's that long, were walking around calling themselves as Salafiyyah. That didn't exist. We don't know of any group prior to our modern era that called themselves as Salafiyyah. Not that I know of. If someone can show, we're open to always, we don't know the whole world. If anyone can show me a group of people, scholars, I ain't talking about common people who could be, I don't even think common people did it. A group of scholars who called themselves prior to, let's give 300 years just to be safe, 300 years ago, right? That called themselves as Salafiyyah. And that was a movement. No such thing. No such thing. And if someone says it was, sure, we're open to listen. Where were they at? So this is a new movement. Furqan, slow your horses. Stop arguing for them. Let them argue for themselves. I'm going to walk you right through that. But hold on, I'm going to put a pin in that because I'll come back to that, right? So as Salafiyyah are not as Salaf, right? They're not the same. So as Salaf is a blessed period of time and people. As Salafiyyah is a modern group that claims to follow the way, the methodology of as-Salaf. Is this point clear? I'm not interested in the one who's not listening. I'm interested in the one who really want to learn. All right. So those who are just entertaining themselves, I'm not really even talking to you, except if you're just listening, and you benefit. But who I'm really talking to, who I really need to make sure is people who are really trying to learn and understand. The one who's just following me for, I don't know why you listen to me. I had the slightest idea. But if you don't got nothing else to do with your time, Ahlan wa sahlan, because I don't follow you, trust me. I don't. I don't got the time to waste. Unless I'm benefiting from you, I'm not wasting my time listening to you. And I would suggest if you're not benefiting from me, don't waste your time. You don't have a lot. So if you're listening to me, make sure you're benefiting and learning. If you don't find any benefit in learning, if it's just entertainment for you, I strongly advise you to go do something else with your time. I'm not worth wasting your time if you're not learning something and you're not benefiting. I would never do that. Nor would I suggest you do that. So when I say clear, I'm talking to the one who's really trying to learn something. And they think or believe that what I'm presenting is beneficial to them. Other than that, please don't waste your time. I don't care if it was only one person that was benefiting. I'll talk to that one person. But the others, don't waste your time. You need your time. Really, really bad. You need your time. So we understand that. Now, when someone says we on the way of the Salaf in our time, that's a claim. And claims need to be substantiated. That is a claim. Because you say it, don't make it true. That's a claim that needs to be substantiated. So that means we're going to have to actually examine the way of the Salaf and then contrast that to your claim. Right? We're going to need to, okay, how do we examine the methodology or the understanding of as-Salaf? That means from them, not from someone else, from them. Now, the question for us, how do we get the knowledge of the Salaf? Right? Where are the resources from which we authentically find the understanding of the Salaf? Here's where we're going to get hit. And some people, I agree with them in this. If you don't know Arabic, you can forget about really understanding the way of the Salaf. You're stuck. You have no choice but to follow someone else. That's real. Why? Because the vast majority of the information about the Salaf, the real Salaf, is still not translated. It is what it is. So when we talk about a Salaf, there is an absolute necessity to have access to the Arabic language. Do y'all understand that? We having real talk. I'm showing us what we're up against, right? When we're trying to clarify these things. The vast majority of the statements and lives and practices of a Salaf is solely in the Arabic language. It has not been translated. The reliable books, the trustworthy books that mention the practices and the statements and the life of the Salaf is in Arabic. So from one standpoint, that could be problematic. From another standpoint, you got to find a trustworthy teacher. Because if you can't do something, that doesn't mean it stops. It means you're going to have to rely on someone else. And that means someone who actually has access to the original text and understands it and can convey it. I want a suggestion for all of you. Every one of us, every single one of us, needs to, at minimum, reach the level that we can read and follow, even if we don't fully understand in Arabic. In other words, if I put this text in front of you, not this one because it's a little bit more difficult, right? You could actually read this. Even if you didn't understand it, you could actually read it. I'm going to tell you why I say that. Understanding is another level. But if I put this in front of you, you can read it. This may be difficult because it doesn't have vowels. So that's another level. But at least if I put the vowels on this, you could follow it. Even if you didn't understand, you could follow. That means you should know your alphabet and you should know the vowels and you should know how to make out words. You follow my point? At minimum, all of us, for our own development, should be at least there. Why do I say that? Because if you can follow and you're researching and you're relying on someone else, which you have no choice, at least you can make out the words and you can check with others, right? Because you can actually know what they said. And then you can, if you didn't trust me, for instance, so if I read something to you, right, and you didn't believe me, you could write it down and you could give it to someone else and say, could you translate this for me, right? At least you can have a way to ensure that the words are preserved, right? So you didn't trust me. Maybe I was mistaken. You can refer to someone else with the same thing. At least you have a way of verifying that this was the actual words that were said. Do y'all follow that point? That's at the basic level. All of us must strive to get there. And it would be extremely helpful if all of us were there. So that means in our masajid, especially in our communities, there should be a basic Arabic class. Ain't nobody asking you to be no great scholar. We're just saying, let's just have some basic things that's easy in our community so it facilitates discussions, right? This is important, right? A lot of times, if I have one complaint about us as Sunni Muslims, Ahl Sunnah, Asharis, Maturidis, Hanafis, Malikis, Shafis, Hanbalis, Sufis, our works that we refer to, the sources we use, are too scholarly for the level of the people we're talking to most of the time. They're a little bit, they take, the books are written in a way that it's assumed you already have some prerequisite knowledge, which most of us don't have. Let me repeat that. The books of the Sunnis are written for the most part in a way that it assumes that you already know some basic stuff. And that basic stuff that it assumes you know, we don't know. We've never had access to it. We're totally unfamiliar with it. So therefore, the books are too complicated. This is problematic. And it's something we have to work around while we build that capacity in people that they have some foundational understandings, right? That's a challenge, right? In other words, the Sunni books are not Islam for Dummies series. You know, they got that, what's they call that series? The Dummy series. You know, what's the name of those books? Computers for Dummies, Arabic for Dummies. You know, they got that series of the dummies, the yellow and black book. Y'all familiar what I'm talking about, right? So our books are not like that. Our books assume that you already know some stuff and foundational information. And that's a false assumption when it comes to us because we don't know, right? So we're used to books that are written for people who don't have any background information. And that's why those simple slogans sound good to us. I just follow Quran and Sunnah. That means, translation to us, I don't have to do anything. I just quote a hadith and quote a verse and I'm on it. No understanding, no conditions, no principles, no prerequisites, none of that. Just bam, Quran, Sunnah. Protestant Islam at its finest. Sunni books don't work that way. They're actually built upon things. So there needs to be a level of literacy among us, right? There needs to be some background information, and we have to build that capacity. And I don't say it to put us down. It's just real, right? We have to build a capacity. With that being said, so the books of the Salaf, we don't have access to them in general. So if you went around all of our masajid throughout the country and you went in the libraries of those masajid, especially in the inner cities, you'll be lucky if you find 10 books that's really about the Salaf. You'd be lucky. Right? You go in the masjid, and I want to read books just with the statements of the Salaf and from the people of the Salaf with a continuous chain of narration to the Salaf. You'd be hard-pressed to find that in our libraries. Most of our masjids don't even have libraries. That's a whole nother story, right? So we have to fix that, right? But we have to identify it first in order to fix it. You can't fix something you don't know nothing about. So we have to fix it by identifying it. That's why we're having this conversation, right? So now, when we examine the works of the Salaf, and I'm going to show you this, like to give you by way of example. So this is like my scattered thoughts. I've been thinking a lot of like, how can we help each other, right? Because some things are not a debate. Some things are just pure lack of access and knowledge. It don't have nothing to do, you making a debate about something that is obvious for the one who knows. It's not a debate. It's not even an argument. We're not even at the level to debate or argue. We need to be learning and identifying things first. And then once you learn and identify, then maybe we can have a discussion and debate or whatever you want to call it. But you got to have some prerequisites first. You actually got to know what we're talking about. That's important. So what has been given to us is a narrative from the Salafiyyah group, not from the Salaf. So what most of us have access to in our community is not as Salaf, it's as Salafiyyah claiming to represent the understanding of the Salaf. There is a distinct difference between the two. Does everyone understand that? There's a vast difference from the two. What's the evidence? Where's your dalil, Ak? If you tell the average person to name scholars who have the understanding of the Salaf in our communities, in our environments, I guarantee you they name the big four. Who are the big four? Let's put them, the big five, I like to say. They're extended, but let's use the big five. Ahmed ibn Taymiyyah, right? Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, Bin Baz, Ibn Baz, you can say, Abdul Aziz bin Baz, right? Ibn Uthaymin, and Al-Albani, Nasiruddin Al-Albani. Any discussion you have with those Salafiyyah people, you will not have a conversation except that one of these five or these five are the evidences for the understanding of the Salaf. Try it. If you're having a discussion about a Salaf in our time with the average person, and you want to talk about a Salaf, he's going to be quoting Ahmed ibn Taymiyyah or Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab or Bin Baz or Ibn Uthaymeen or Al-Albani. And no, I didn't forget Fawzan. I'll tell you why. I didn't forget him. If I talked about them, I talked about Fawzan. Why? Because these are the referent scholars of all those other people. So Fawzan is a student of Bin Baz and Ibn Uthaymeen. So whatever he says, except where he add his own stuff, is a rehashing of the words of Bin Baz, Ibn Uthaymeen, or Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, or Ibn Taymiyyah. Do you understand? Likewise, all these other sheikhs, oh, I studied with Sheikh so-and-so, all of them just repeat what they said. So if you left all them out and just went to their works, you got everything the next guy going to talk about. Do you understand? So you don't really need to mention all of them because they're only parroting them. That's their madhab. That's as Salafiyyah right there. These are shuyukh Salafiyyah. They are kibar al-ulama in the Salafiyyah. They are the major scholars among the Salafiyyah. It is what it is. And none of them are from the Salaf. So if you're using them as an evidence, right? If you're losing them, that's a good one. I like that. Abdul Batin, I'm going to come back to that. I like that. I'm going to share something with you. That's beautiful. So none of these people are from the Salaf. So at best, their understanding of the Salaf could be right and could be wrong. At best, it's not in and of itself an authoritative position. Let me repeat that. Since none of them were from the Salaf, they didn't live with the Salaf. They never met anyone from the Salaf except in a dream. In the dream, they may have dreamed about the Salaf, and they may have talked to someone from the Salaf in their dreams. It's possible. It's not an intellectual impossibility, but actually meeting, no. Right? Unless by way of some karama, but they don't like Sufism, so I don't think they're going to say that, right? So here, their statements at best have the probability of being right and the probability of being wrong. It's not in and of itself, because they said it, a proof. Does everyone understand that? Just because they said the Salaf were like this, in and of itself is not a proof. It needs to be substantiated by the actual works and words and actions of the Salaf. Do y'all follow that? So don't tell me because Ibn Taymiyyah said it. He could be right, and likewise he could be wrong. Do y'all understand that? And that is not necessarily a criticism of him himself. It's just facts. He could be wrong, because that's not where the buck stops at Ahmed ibn Taymiyyah. The buck doesn't stop at Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. The buck doesn't stop at Bin Baz, nor Ibn Uthaymeen, nor Al-Albani. So when you're stopping there, what you're saying is that other than them, subconsciously, even if you don't say it in words, subconsciously, that other than them didn't understand the way of the Salaf. And that is a big fat mistake. Subconsciously, what you're instilling in people is that if these 5 people didn't agree with it, it is not the way of the Salaf. And that's a false insinuation you're putting in people's mind. Are y'all following this? This is so important. So you need to memorize all those names. And listen, things are made known by their opposites. I don't no longer want, like us, right, to just blindly follow anybody. Anybody. I didn't say don't follow nobody. I said don't blindly follow anybody. All of us, we all agree, whether Sunni or Salafi, or Wahhabi. When I say Salafi, you already clarified that, right? All of us say everyone's statement may be accepted or rejected except the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's ma'soom. He's infallible. Everybody else, they could be right, they could be wrong. That's a fact. So if that applies to everybody, it applies to them too, right? It applies to them. And we don't need them to know about the Salaf. We don't need to never mention any one of them, and we can still find the way of the Salaf. If you understand Islam, you don't have to listen to Ahmed ibn Taymiyyah. You don't have to listen to Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. You don't have to listen to bin Baz. You don't have to listen to Ibn Uthaymeen. You don't have to listen to Al-Albani to know the Salaf. You don't need them at all. If you understand our religion and how it's conveyed. We relate from the Salaf from many routes, and majority of those routes don't go through none of them. And I'm talking about like 99% of them. In our chains of narration, none of them go through any of them, not a one. Right? We don't relate from them at all, in nothing. That's deep when you think about it. And we go all the way back to the Salaf, and we never mention them. So if we chase in hadith, in fiqh, in tafsir, in usul al-fiqh, any science, none of our routes to the Salaf go through them. And if we wanted in Hanbali fiqh, we could go to Imam Ahmed without going to Ahmed ibn Taymiyyah. We don't even have to go through him. In fact, in routes that we know, he's intentionally avoided because of his opinions that contradicted the madhab, even Ibn Taymiyyah. So they're not an authority in reality, and they're not a standard of the Salaf or not the Salaf, meaning the understanding of the Salaf or not the understanding of the Salaf. But the picture that is painted, right? The picture that is painted is as if without them, we don't know the way of the Salaf. Have you noticed that? Be fair and be honest. When they're talking, it is presented as if it is not for them, we don't know about the Salaf. That's a fabrication, or that's a false ideology that is stated without being stated. It's false. That's not true at all. But the average person in our communities don't realize that. In fact, they're offended if you say what I just said. Why are you offended? It's true. We don't need to listen to them at all about nothing. And we still would get to the Salaf and know our religion. We don't need to relate from them at all, period. And Islam and the knowledge of Islam would still be the same. It wouldn't change one bit. Do y'all realize that? No, I'm serious. Do you realize that? So this is important stuff. I'm building something. All right, I'll open up. I'll stop here so we don't go too long because I'm already an hour. I could go on for days with this stuff, but so we break it up, right? So I'm going to open up for, make sure I put a pin in it right there. So the Salaf understanding is not taken from the big five among as-Salafiyyah. That's not the definitive position of the understanding of the Salaf, because we're talking about and I'm going to come back to this, right? Whenever I have a scattered thought for the next couple days, I'm going to talk about this subject. I'm just going to keep going. So you have to follow. And I'll put, when I'm going to go on, because it's really related to my time, about this issue, I'll put it, inshallah, on our Facebook of Masjid Muhammad of Atlantic City, and I'll put it on my personal page, Amin Muhammad. And then you can share it so that people know what time I'm going to discuss, because I'm going to take you through a long journey on this. It's not something I could do overnight, right? But this is important, because one mistake we've been doing, and I've noticed it, we've been refuting without making sure people understand what we're actually refuting. So they just hear refutation. They don't understand even why there is a need for refutation or clarification. They just hear names. They don't understand why we mentioning those names, right? We need to fix that. And then it appears that you're just looking for somebody to get in your group. So I don't have a group. I never ask no one to follow me. I'm not worthy of being followed. I want you to follow the proper methodology of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, right? That's the key, so that you can follow the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam correctly. If you get that through one of us, mashallah, who can. If you get it from someone else, it's fine. Just get it. And be a proper practicing Muslim in creed and practice and spirituality. That's all it's about. But we have to understand, and that takes time. And give yourself that. Ain't no one been trying to really teach us. They've been having us like sheep. Just follow cattle. Just don't learn. Just follow. And we need to get past that. We need to actually know what we're following. And if you know, then you follow good. But in the meanwhile, we have to learn seriously. Okay. So I'm open up for questions. I hope if whatever I said wasn't clear, you got the chance to ask the question. Dictate a phone to record your sessions. Maybe, inshallah, I will try to start. But sometimes you're asking a lot from me, because I don't really follow a schedule well, because I'm extremely busy. So sometimes I'm hitting and missing, and I just, when I get time, I'll do it. But inshallah, let's see if we can work something out. Inshallah. Make dua for us. So Salaf linguistically means those who came before you, right? Your predecessors. So that hadith mentions those 3 generations, and it refers to those who came before us, the companions, the followers, and the followers of the followers. So Salaf is what is understood from those 3 generations as related to those who came after them. That's the meaning of Salaf there. So what is the difference from Ibn Taymiyyah, Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, Ibn Baz, Ibn Uthaymeen, Al-Albani, as to Imam al-Nawawi, Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, or Imam al-Ghazali? Those Imams, number one, were closer to the time of the Salaf. All of those Imams, except Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, were before Ibn Taymiyyah. Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, because of his knowledge in hadith, he reached the level of Amir al-Mu'mineen fil hadith. All of those later scholars are relying on the narrations that were coming through those Imams or their students. So they are quoting and referring to the works of those Imams who were closer to the Salaf. So if we're going to talk about an understanding of the Salaf, and I'm going to put a priority of something, I'm going to refer to Imam al-Nawawi or Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar al-Asqalani or Imam al-Ghazali before I refer to Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, bin Baz, Ibn Uthaymeen, Al-Albani, just by closeness and then level of scholarship, and then connections of chains and access and reliability of works. So there's a difference. It's not the same. They're not equal. Not at all. Not even close. And then we talk about levels of knowledge. Except for Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah, the other 4 are not a tenth of those scholars like An-Nawawi, Ibn Hajar Asqalani, or Al-Ghazali. They're not a tenth of them in knowledge, nor in narration, nor in Arabic language, nor in any of the sciences of Islam. None of them can compare at all, not even close. Not because Amin and Muhammad said it, they know that. They mention it themselves. Their students mention that. They're nowhere near. So when you say An-Nawawi or Imam An-Nawawi or Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar al-Asqalani and Imam al-Ghazali, you can't say their names and put those 4 people even in the conversation. It's not even the same conversation. These people are not even qualified at the level of Al-Hafiz ibn Hajar al-Asqalani or Imam An-Nawawi. It's not even comparison at all, not even close. For you, Furqan, that's like saying the high school basketball player against Michael Jordan. Come on, man. So you saying throw them out, they're not going to throw them out. They actually going to compare them, right? And Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Qayyim are going to be conditioned for most of them by those scholars. So even they're not going to refer exactly to Ibn Taymiyyah or Ibn Qayyim because they use them as a reference. They're conditioned on them. What did they say? Ibn Taymiyyah made a mistake here, or Ibn Qayyim made a mistake here, but Shaykh al-Islam, Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, or Bin Baz said, or Ibn Uthaymeen said. You don't know how deep this stuff go. Al-Albani said, so they're not going to. Ibn Taymiyyah used weak hadiths. Ibn Qayyim used weak hadiths. They're not going to accept that. They're not going to accept that. All of them use weak hadiths in their books. They're not going to accept that. All of those, Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Qayyim, follow the madhab strictly in terms of I'm Hanbali. They were Sufis. They don't tell you that. Ibn Taymiyyah wrote, Ibn Qayyim wrote about Sufism in their books. They don't tell you about that stuff. If you read their books, these people were Sufis. They were Sufis. And their books were explicit with stuff in Tasawwuf. They follow the madhab. They were Hanbalis. There was no la madhabis. They read books of fiqh. They explained books of fiqh. They used weak hadith in books of fiqh. Yes, they did. Their books are available. Read them. No, most of their books are in Arabic, so most of us can't read them. We don't know what they're saying. We're relying on Bin Baz, Ibn Uthaymeen, Al-Albani, Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. Sad. And the funny thing is you hear people talking and it's obvious from the stuff they're saying that you haven't read the books of Ibn Taymiyyah nor Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyyah. You haven't read them. That's obvious. From this statement that they did not use weak hadiths in Aqidah, they never used weak hadiths in Aqidah, read their books. Read their books. Don't read somebody else's quoting. Read their actual books, and you will see that they have weak hadith in those books. Read them. Look, even your own scholars who edit their books mention weak hadith in their books. What are you talking about? That means you haven't read. That's obvious. So just parroting, like you ain't read the books. You know it and I know it. How do I know it? Because I read some of the books. Not all of them, but I read them to distinguish the difference. So I know that's not true. And if you're honest, you know you ain't read all their books in Aqidah to make that statement. Listen to what I say. Make it easy for you, our brother. Don't ask me to do your work for you. You said they don't have no weak hadiths. You have the books of Ibn Taymiyyah. Go look. And then be honest. Go do your research. No microwave Islam. Go do your research and then be honest. Come back and say, Imam Amin, I was mistaken. There are weak hadiths in their books. Go do the research. Don't tell me to do it for you. Since you're so sure, that means you read. You're not a liar, I hope. Or you could be honest. How many books of Aqidah of Ibn Taymiyyah you read? Just be honest with yourself. Like, I'm not the guy you can do all that stuff with. Seriously. How many books of Ibn Taymiyyah have you read in Aqidah? How many books you've read? Be honest, my brother. Just answer the question. Okay. At least we can be honest. So you making definitive statements that you don't know. Yes, I can't read all of his books. Like, I don't know Arabic. It'll take me years to read. Okay, so stop talking definitive. Say, I don't know. That's much easier, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. That's honesty. You don't know, and that's fine. So stop challenging and learn, because you can't have the conversation because you don't have access to even the works of the one you're trying to talk about. That's not putting you down. That's fair. You quoting and quoting and quoting. You never read a book. That doesn't make sense. So you don't know, and that's fair. Now, I'll say, get in the student mode, or go to those people you parroting and say, please read me a book of Ibn Taymiyyah cover to cover. Let's say 3 books in Aqidah. Any 3 books in Aqidah of Ibn Taymiyyah, read them from cover to cover and check all the narrations. You got teachers, tell them to ask you and see how, and then see if you can come back and be honest and show us how many weak hadith there are in those books. By a statement of your own scholars. That's research. Not microwave Islam, that's research. That's being fair. Don't be unjust, right? What you should have said in the beginning, I don't know. And I should research. Not, you're wrong and you go do my research. What the heck is that? Listen to that. You're wrong and go do my research. Come on, bro. Be serious. That's not fair. No, say, I don't know, and I need to research, and then I'll come back and I'll challenge what you said. After I did my own research. Other than that, it's blind following. Don't blind follow nobody, not even me. Go research. So here's your homework. Go read, because you're doing it, since you're quoting, just any 3 books, major books of Ibn Taymiyyah, his works. Not someone quoting his works, his actual books, and see if that's true. If you get my point. Other than that, we're just parrots quoting, and we're not really being serious. And I'm not criticizing you. I'm helping us, because I'm gonna do the same thing, right? I do the same thing, right? So I see it. That's why I know, because I'm doing what I'm telling you. But if you're just going to go from parrot to parrot to parrot, it doesn't help you any. You quote this one, then you quote that one, and you never really learn to do research. You have to learn. It's important. That's the whole purpose of the conversation. Not so you can just say, yeah, Imam Amin said it and that's it. No, so we can actually become a group of researchers and understanding our deen ourselves. Do you follow my point? That's the whole purpose. And some people say, why are you telling them that? Because we tired of blind following and I know what we're talking about. And then causing a bunch of confusion and not willing to do no work. But you know what we need to do? We need to make it okay for somebody to say, I don't know, and not feel guilty. Because actually we don't know. Don't feel bad about that. Say, I don't know, right? And then approach the situation like that. I really don't know. I'm learning. It's fine. It's not a crime to not know and learn. It's a crime to not know and act like you know. That's criminal. But if you don't know, alhamdulillah, I'm learning. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm listening. You follow? So let's work on that, our brother. So even at the first level, I'm going to show you those things, but you have to be patient. Or you could go do the research on your own and then bring it back. Right? So you have 2 choices. You can be patient, go through it with me, and be patient as I take you through it and you learn. Or you could go do the research yourself and then come back with the answers and questions yourself because you did the research. You don't have to wait for me. You can actually go do it. But then I would suggest that when you discover you were mistaken, that you be honest enough to say, you know what, I was mistaken. You were right. There are weak hadith in their books, right? There are weak hadith, yes. And they used them and they quoted them. Yes, they did. That's true. All right, and I love you, so don't take my way of expressing, because I'm not really talking to you, I'm talking to us collectively. We have to get over that. Myself included, not just you, me too. Imam Amin, I thought we had the books of the Salaf through Imam Haddad, Imam Nawawi, and Imam Ghazali. Here, when you're reading the books of the Ba'alawi books, like Imam Haddad and others, when they say Salaf, often they're talking about their grandfathers. They're not mean by Salaf the first three generations, only in context. So they'll use the word as Salaf or the Salaf, and they're talking about their grandfathers from the family of the Prophet ﷺ. So it depends how it's being used. If they're talking about the early Muslims, then still, even for them, there is this narration and connection. You follow? So that has different definitions depending on who's using it and how. Did the Salaf have Ashari Aqidah? Yes. So that means, forget the name, what was Ashari Aqidah? Ashari Aqidah is a broad methodology of approaching all of the aspects of Aqidah. Imam al-Ashari got his Aqidah from those scholars that preceded him among the Salaf. Remember, Imam al-Ashari died in the year 324. So you're talking about 2 to 3 generations from the Salaf in terms of time. And he relates with his chain of narration from his teachers and from the scholars in that time, the positions of the Salaf. He was right there in their time. So the creed that he conveyed is based on the creed of the Salaf. What was the function of Imam al-Ash'ari? Putting it in a systematic structure so it is clear and accessible. That's his job. That's what he did. But what did he put in a clear, systemized, structured formation? The creed of the Salaf. So yes, they had the same creed. It only became known as the Ash'ari Creed because he was the one who codified it, structured it, put it in a systematic way so that we would understand our belief. So there's the same belief. It's nothing different. Do you understand it? So you understand the function of a madhab or an imam. That's what he does. That's his job. So when you say, did he have a different belief? He conveyed the belief from them. He put it in a structure. He explained the difficult statements. He clarified narrations. He did all that work and said, this is the belief of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. And other imams before him, like Imam al-Tahawi, like Imam Abu Mansur al-Maturidi, they did all the same work. Okay, other question. Similar, are they, meaning the Wahhabiyya, doing what the Christians and Jews did with their scholars? Same stuff. I won't say they worshiping them. They ain't doing that. However, they've made their scholars authorities and blocked out access to other scholars. Programming. Right? It's programming. That's it. Now, That's the big programming. But slowly but surely, last question. In Islam, to my understanding, we are supposed to say, I don't know when we don't know something. We are supposed to refer to those known of. Yeah, that's the point. But for all of us, listen, we are all in the process of learning, every single one of us. It is what it is. We're going to learn. That's it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, ya Imam. What is the purpose of people using weak hadith, when they know that they are weak? Different scholars, they had different approaches. So this goes to the foundations of how scholars deduce legal rulings and what they prefer as evidences and sources of evidences over other things. Weak hadith is a speculative categorization. What do I mean by that? What may be weak to one person as a weak narration may not be weak according to others, right? So because Al-Albani says it's weak doesn't mean all scholars of hadith, and he's not among them, agree that it's weak, if you understand what I said. Because the judgment of classifying hadith and their grade is the position of a hafiz, and Al-Albani wasn't one of them. So he only can quote in his real position. What he says is of really no weight, according to the experts in the field. The Hufav, I know this is something a little bit, for some of us, we might not know what I'm talking about. But so he's not an authority, really. He's only can quote, and that's all he does anyway. And then he makes his own things, and usually wrong and mistaken in that all the time. So weak is subjective to who's examining the narration and other considerations that strengthen hadith. This is in the science of hadith. So because someone used a weak hadith, to them, because it's weak, does not necessarily mean that it doesn't have some supporting evidence. It doesn't have some impact on an understanding. And it definitely doesn't mean that it's wrong, right? That it's fabricated. Weak and fabricated are two different things. So all of those things and more are taken into consideration when you're judging a narration. And Allah knows best. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Because listen, I'm trying to take complicated concepts and make it accessible so you can understand the conversation. Because all of these things are actually independent lessons, which require details. So we're summarizing, so that we can move us up to a level of a basic understanding of concepts, which we don't have, a lot of us. We just repeat with no understanding. And we're trying to fix that. But that takes time. So I would say this: have a little patience, right? We got to stop being the microwave generation. I want it now, right now, 1 minute, done. That's a slow cooked meal. It takes 2 hours. You want it in 20 minutes. It's not even going to taste the same when you finish. Would you please let it cook like it's supposed to cook? Right? We just want to be told. We don't want to have to do anything. We have to break that. We need to study step by step, right? I don't got to go through all that, man. I'm busy. I know, you're too busy to learn. Stop being so busy. Make some time to learn. I love you, brother. You gonna quit, right? No, I'm messing with you. Okay, here's the problem. People say, what people? Who say that? So I got a question. You asking a question, I'm going to ask you a question. And let me walk you through what I'm talking about. People say, who are people? Who say that? That's too vague. People say, who are the people? So that's first question. You can answer that. Asharis use philosophy to build aqidah. Okay. What Asharis? And who are the Asharis you're referring to? And what is philosophy? Right? And is that true? Right? And considering hadiths as speculatives, so based on that, hadiths cannot be relied even if it's sahih. No one said that. I said weak hadiths, and judging them is something that one scholar may agree with and another one may not, depending upon the vastness of their understanding of the hadith body of literature, right? Let me ask you a question. You ready? If a person has one eye or two eyes, who's going to see better? He has one eye or two eyes. Who's going to see better? That's a question. One eye or two eyes, who's going to see better? The one with two eyes. All right. This is an analogy for you, right? You agree. The one with two eyes is going to see better. So if one is looking at a hadith and he's only looking at one chain of narration for that hadith, and another one is looking at two or more chains of narration, who's going to see that hadith better? The one looking at one narration or the one looking at three or two? That's the next question. So who's going to see more? The one looking at one narration of the hadith or the one looking at two or more narrations of the hadith? Okay. So if one looks at one narration and says it's weak, and another one looks at that narration from more than one route, he says, no, it's not weak. Based on this narration, it strengthens that narration. You see the difference? So sometimes one may say weak based on the lack of other narrations and knowledge of that. That's why the one who grades has to be at a certain level of hadith knowledge before he can even be qualified to grade, because he may miss narrations that impact the one that he's looking at. Do you understand? Do you follow me? So when you study the science of hadith, this becomes important. Sometimes you're just not aware of multiple narrations. And based on that, you judge. Al-Albani was famous for that. And that's why you will find in some books the same hadith, Al-Albani would say weak. In another book, he say it is sound. Sometimes even authentic, to the point that he had to retract his judgments multiple times, and entire books have been written on him taking back his judgments upon hadith. That's Al-Albani, for instance, who was supposed to be the hadith scholar. You follow? I'm just talking about hadith. So if Al-Albani's making a statement, and then there is a Hafiz making another statement, who are we going to take the authority? Al-Albani or the Hafiz? That's a question. I'm helping you. Are we going to take the judgment of Al-Albani, or are we going to take the judgment of a Hafiz? And the Hafiz is one, to give you a number, who memorized 100,000 hadith with their chains. So who we're going to take? Just by knowledge, we're not going to take Al-Albani's statement over a Hafiz. So I'm helping you, understanding that there's a lot of information you're not aware of, and that's fine. So when you're talking from a point of not having a lot of information. So I'm trying to help you get information that will unravel some of the confusion. And it's not all definitive, because remember, we're summarizing some things that require details. But in order for you to follow those details, you have to have some foundation, which you don't have, and which the discussion will help you begin to get some foundational understanding so we can build upon that. And you have to be patient with that. Don't be a blind follower. He didn't say what I want, I'm out of here. Say, I'm learning, let me be patient, right? Do you follow? Right. So just keep following, brother. This is no way to discourage you. It should encourage you, right? I'll tell you a story about me so you get it. One time, I went to one of my teachers, and I wanted to study hadith from a route from a specific sheikh. That sheikh was Al-Hafiz Abdullah Al-Ghumari, rahimahullah ta'ala. He was a great scholar from Morocco, but was stationed or residing in Al-Azhar and teaching in Egypt for a long time before he went back home. He was a great scholar from Morocco, but Azhari, then went back, great scholar. So I went to one of my teachers who was a direct narrator from him, one of his students. And I said, at that time, I want to learn the books of Sheikh Abdullah Al-Ghumari. He said to me, I never forget, this was like the biggest lesson for me ever. And I appreciate it to this day. It was weird, but it worked. He said, I got two conditions for you. Number one, two things. He said, I'm not going to teach you the books of Sheikh Abdullah till you read the books of Al-Albani. At that time, I was straight blind follower, and I had nothing but animosity for Al-Albani from the teachers I learned. I honestly, at that time, I didn't even consider Al-Albani as a Muslim at all, right? I didn't even consider it. That's how radical I was in my approach to Al-Albani, right? There wasn't even a thought to consider him even Muslim, let alone a scholar, right? I'm just giving you. So when that teacher says that to me, I'm like, what the heck? I was almost ready not to listen to him either. Like, what did you just say? Right? That type of feeling. But I wanted, and he was the one who had those narrations, high narrations. He spent a lot of time with Sheikh Abdullah Al-Ghumari, and he had his narrations, and I wanted it. So he made that condition. The other condition, he wanted me to learn a trade. He said, if you don't do both of those, I'm not going to teach you. It was the weirdest thing I've ever heard at that time. Today, I was like, man, he was wise. He was observing the student. So those were the two conditions. You learn a trade, and he had the particular trade so that you can make money. And you read the books of Al-Albani. And once you're doing that, I'll teach you the books of Sheikh Abdullah. So he gave me the books of, he didn't send me, he gave them to me. Certain books in Hadith, right? I read those books. And I started with the trade thing, right? I did both. But I was more interested in one thing. Then, after I read, he said, he asked me some stuff. And then we started reading the books of Sheikh Abdullah al-Ghumari, different books. And because I understood and had read those books of Al-Albani, when Sheikh Abdullah al-Ghumari was correcting the mistakes, it was easy for me to follow. I knew exactly what he was saying. I knew exactly where it was. And I was able to follow him straight. Had he not told me that, and I'm not saying everyone needs to go about the same route. He's looking at me as a student. He knows me, so he knows how I am. I'm not saying everyone go read books of Al-Albani. That's not my suggestion. Don't misunderstand. But so whenever he was talking about narrations, I already knew the mistake of Al-Albani and the contradiction of Al-Albani and how it could be clarified. So I understood it. Had I not had that background, I wouldn't know what he was talking about. And I may have questioned him because I just didn't understand. And he knew that potential. So he lifted the veil of confusion by making me understand some background information to what we're talking about. Now, remember, I'm with the teacher. I'm not doing this on my own. He's there with me. He's guiding me. So whenever I have questions, I'm right there to talk to him, right? So it's different from someone doing something on their own. I'm being guided in this. He's observing what I'm doing. He's questioning me. He's following me. He's checking narrations. I'm studying with him. I'm in classes. I'm learning. There's a difference. He's not just telling me go off on your own and do something, right? He's teaching me and training me, right? To this day, I appreciate it. To this day. To me, it was an unorthodox way of learning, but it worked. It worked. So I'm able to follow because I learned both. I understand how he got where he got, and I understand how he reached where he reached, right? And I'm able to follow the discussion, right? I'm not confused. And because I'm able to follow the discussion, I can ask the appropriate questions. I actually know the books. I actually know how to research. I actually know how to follow. I know how to listen. So it was a training. That's what I'm asking you to do. And if we can get to that level, stop making each other have to be at arms with each other. Listen, we just talking, bro. It's not a fight. I disagree with you. I could be wrong in my disagreement. Can we talk? Like, can we just discuss it? And let's see what it comes out. Maybe I will be educated. Maybe you will be educated. We both can learn something. Why we got to fight about it? We don't know enough to be fighting. What are you talking about? We're trying to understand. What are we fighting about? Right? But they've made us already at arms. Let me tell you a story that happened. I'm going way over. You can go if you got to go. But I'll tell you a story that happened to me. One guy was pushing me to an idea that I disagreed with. He's a leader, like a teacher. I said, I don't agree with that. So he quoted a Quran, a verse. He said, this verse, I said to him, that verse is not an evidence for what you're using it for. No scholar of tafsir ever said that. He's like, how you know that? He was just assuming that I don't know. I said, forget how I know it. Give me any book of tafsir that said that, what you said. He started naming books. I said, okay, let's go check those books. Let's look at the verse. Let's look what you said. Let's go check those books. We checked 5 books, major books of tafsir. None of the scholars of tafsir said what he said. I said, we actually went and checked. I said, here's this book, you named it. Here's the statement, not there. The book, you other book you said, here's the statement, not there. 5 major books. You're making this stuff up. Wouldn't it have been easier to say that's what you was told? I don't think he made it up. I think someone told him, he never checked. And he just made that the position. He didn't research at all. Because just research would have solved that problem. He just said, my teacher said, or this is what my group said, and that was it. He never checked, ever. And then he passed it on as authoritative position. He never checked. And what shocked him was that an African American was able to show him that. He had some Arab pride. This black guy cannot know. No, he didn't know. That's wrong. And you know how hard it took him just to say I was mistaken? Man, I had to actually beat him over the head. Like, yo, you were mistaken. You should apologize. You were mistaken. It's not the end of the world, but you should apologize. You were mistaken. All 5 books did not say what you said. And these are the books that you mentioned, and these are books we should refer to, and none of them said what you said. It's a mistake. Your mistake came from blind following and not continuing the learning process. That was the mistake. Not that you not intelligent. You're very intelligent. You made a mistake and you passed it on as an authoritative position. We do that a lot. So collectively, we have to develop the ability to research. Collectively, right? And many of us, let me tell you, many of us are learning now that we've been had. We've been bamboozled, hoodwinked, run amok, led astray. We're discovering it. But that's by design. Don't get upset. Just don't keep doing the same stuff, right? And we can be mistaken. You know one thing I learned from Sheikh Samir, and I'll stop after this. I've never been in a session the vast majority of the times with him over many years that I didn't hear him at some point say, I may be right or I may be wrong. That's like a deep lesson. Multiple times in a session, you would hear him say, I may be right, I may be wrong. This is how I see it. And that was like a lesson for us. I may be right, I may be wrong. This is my view. This is how I see it. But he didn't close the possibility that there may be another way to look at that. Right? Only way he would close that possibility when the issue was absolutely definitive, something that is necessarily known to be of the religion, that every Muslim scholar and layman would agree upon. Other than that, he opened the possibility that there is room for a different view. And then at that different view, you can agree or disagree. But there is the possibility of having more than one view in this issue. It's not something necessarily known to be of the religion. It is not something that is absolutely definitive by scholarly consensus and multiple channels of transmission. It's not that kind of issue. It's an individual issue that a scholar examines and comes away with a conclusion. It could be right, it could be wrong. It's possible. And that's the areas where we have to have fairness. If it's something necessarily known to be of the religion, then every Muslim is going to say that. If it's open for, and we have to be able to distinguish between the two, right? We have to distinguish between the two. And here, some people, they will say, why is he talking about these detailed issues for laymen? Because laymen are having these detailed discussions without no training. Let me repeat. Some will say, why is he talking about these detailed issues? Because laymen are actually having these discussions without any training or any corrections, any guidance, any foundational information. They're having the discussions because they're on the internet. They're on the internet and they're hearing all these things, and it's in their communities, in the masjid. They hear it, but no one is, not enough. I don't say no one. Not enough people say, all right, hold up. Let me give you some principles here. Let me guide you along the path. Let me show you some aspects so you don't make a mess out of this. Someone has to do it. And we can't do it for everyone. We do it for the ones we can reach. At least we have a group of people who have some foundational learning, who are actually able to understand some concepts. And this is the way now. Other than that, the airwaves will be filled up with Wahhabi, Salafi ideas and nothing to counter that stuff. Or it's just the elite class, the elite students of knowledge who don't have nothing to do with the common people. So the common people still having a discussion, still confusing. You sitting in your ivory tower with your group of people who are affluent like you, and that's all they listen to. It's not helping everybody else. So somebody got to come down to the small people and be down there with them and take all that comes with it. We embrace it because we from them. So we understand. All right, may Allah reward y'all. I think I answered all your questions. Yeah, I did, I think. Oh, why the trade? Because he wanted you to be able to have your own money so religion don't be the way you have to earn your money. Because if you have to earn your money solely through the knowledge, you might be compromised when people have to pay you for the knowledge. There's the possibility that the one who's paying you will compromise you. So they said, learn to make your own money so you can just speak. So I talk the way I talk because ain't nobody paying me, right? I'm not saying if you say that, you bring up this issue, you're fired. I don't work for you, so you can't fire me. I'm not worrying about you canceling me. You can't cancel me. You follow my point? That's why he said that. Right? I don't care about the board of directors. They don't mean nothing to me. They're not going to tell me what to do. I'm not worried about them. They're going to say to me, you know what, Imam? If you bring up this topic, or if you talk about this, you're fired. You can't fire me. I don't work for you. Right? You get my point? Because my teachers told me don't rely on religion for your money. So I'm not scared to say Wahhabi. Don't make me the difference. It's the truth. if you keep saying Wahhabi, somebody ain't gonna come and the donation's gonna go down and I ain't gonna be able to run for that office. Man, I don't care about all that. We gotta learn, right? Y'all follow? It's important. But if you happen to be in a position where that is the way you earn your money, just don't compromise your principles. Be prepared that you may be fired if you have to speak the truth. Speak the truth and get fired. Allah is a Razak. He'll provide for you. So I'm not criticizing. I'm just telling you why he said go get a trade. Go learn something. So you're not dependent. Right? You're not dependent on someone pulling the strings. You don't notice a lot of the masjids, the boards are not scholarly people or learned, but the imam is controlled by the board. Y'all didn't notice that? That's a normal thing. You have an imam, he studied, he learned, but he's depending on non-learned people to tell him what to do because they pay the salary. You follow what I mean? You got an imam who's a scholar and he do nothing except, I cannot make no decisions. I can't, the board. A'udhu billah, ain't you the scholar? The board guy is a businessman. He don't even know the rules of the religion. How is he telling you what to do? You should be telling him what to do. Oh, he pay your salary. That's why you can't talk. I believe you, Imam, but I can't do that. Why? You know, man, we ain't trying to cause no fitna. Isn't misguidance fitna? So why you not speaking about that's fitna? Come on, man. It's hard out here. May Allah make it easy for us. May Allah make it easy for us. Alhamdulillah. All right, Barakallahu bikum. I'm sorry for taking, no, I'm not. That's not true. I wanted to take less of your time, but I'm happy you were patient and we worked together to take more time than we needed. May Allah reward you all and increase us in benefit. And for my brother, that we had along the discussion, I love you. Please stick around. I dialogue, I kick it. We all learn together. We cool. It's good. When are you planning on coming to the UK? I don't know. Right now, I'm too busy to travel that far. One day, inshallah. May Allah reward you all. Barakallahu bikum wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajmain. Oh, last thing I forgot. This is just for y'all who were interested because people keep asking. This book is it there? Not. I would recommend that all of you get this book. And we're going to start reading it. It is Ahl Sunnah, the Asharis, right? It's going to tell you about the Ashari school, its scholars, its books, what the scholars said about it. And we do have the whole book read on our YouTube channel. Let me look. I'll find it and give you the link as well. Let me see, where is it at? was a long time ago when we did that book. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Allahu Akbar. Oh, here it go. This is the link for those videos. And I'm going to redo it, inshallah. So this is a YouTube link for the videos for that book. So anyone who wanted to know about the Ashari school, this is the book that I recommend. It's available at mmacbooks.com. And it is available to follow with some explanation and reading of the entire book. There, how many videos is that? It's 85 videos. About this book. So that was way back 2000. We started in 2000. Allahu Akbar. 2001 in February, all the way to September. So that's a long time. So there's available. There's the link for the book. There's the videos. And inshallah, I hope you benefit from it. And inshallah, like I said, we're going to read it again soon. It's going to be scattered though, but we'll read it again. May Allah reward you. Barakallahu bikum wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you for staying with us. May Allah reward you all.